to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. So first item on the agenda tonight is to approve the minutes from our open session, November 1st, 2016. Has everyone had a chance to review those? And if I could get a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move approval of the minutes for November 1st, 2016, open session minutes as written.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye. Abstain.
And one, okay, we have 4 ayes and 1 abstention. Thank you. Okay, moving right along. Communications and announcements. We got some good news, we got some bad news. Good news is we get to swear in Deputy Chief tonight. Bad news is Lieutenant Nicola is not here tonight. So more good news is we get to have you guys all back in our next meeting to swear in Lieutenant Nicola. But we do have the pleasure of swearing in our new Deputy Chief, Graham Rowe, tonight. So, Mr. Chief McCarthy, would you like to?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will take the heat of only having one person to swear in here tonight. Matt actually was tomorrow night, and this is why I'm putting the deputy chief on to double check the things that I do. So I will take the heat for that. But I've enjoyed doing this so often. I'm pretty glad I have to come back here in 2 weeks and do it again. So, but we will have Matt here. But we want to make sure his family's here in 3 weeks. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Assistant Manager. So tonight I have the pleasure of swearing in Lieutenant Graham Rowe to Deputy Chief Rowe. Graham has consistently worked hard at his job. He's professionally developed himself. He's currently finishing up his Fire Officer 3, and Graham has always been a great leader of our department. Graham came on the department June 26, 2004 as a firefighter. He was promoted to lieutenant October 28th of 2012, and then tonight on November 15, 2016, Graham will be sworn in as Deputy Fire Chief. So I guess Joyce will come up and do the swearing in.
Well, again, this is, next to elections, this is my favorite part. So you would raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, state your name,
Graham Rowe,
solemnly promise
solemnly promise
and affirm
that
that I will faithfully,
honestly,
sincerely, and impartially perform all the duties
perform all the duties
that are incumbent upon me
that are incumbent upon me
as the Deputy Fire Chief
as the Deputy Fire Chief
for the town of North
for
Andover.
the town of North Andover.
So help me God.
So help me God. Thank you.
Yeah, come on out here so we can see the pinning and... Graham, congratulations. Thank you for your service and for your continued service.
Graham's already been a great asset to me and to the department. I'm really looking forward tomorrow, Graham's first day as Deputy Fire Chief. So since we do have a couple extra minutes, I'm assuming, maybe Graham might want to just say a few things.
Really putting him on the
Now
spot.
that you're the
Yep,
deputy.
threw me right out there. I want to say thank you. This is something that I've been working hard. I remember interviewing with you when I went for the chief's position with Chief McCarthy. I told you one day I would be standing up here, and I haven't given that up. I'm going to do the best that I can. I know there's a learning curve, but Billy and I will be working very well together, and I look forward to it. Thank you.
Hey, congratulations.
All right, so that's
That's it. We'll see you guys all again next month.
December 5th.
Yeah.
I'll put my Christmas shopping off that night, and we'll make sure we're here. But
Make sure you got
Yeah.
Lieutenant Nicola here.
we'll have to make sure it's here. So.
Okay, we'll give, I know usually the fire crew likes to leave at this point, so we'll give you guys a couple minutes. Oh, do we have something else? No? You guys are free to go. I mean, you can stay if you'd like. We never would discourage you staying, but I know that's not going to happen.
That's a nice turnout.
Yeah. Emptied the room. They were being so good over there, Matt, just playing. They were being great. Hi, guys. Okay, as they exit, we'll continue on with our public hearings. First on the agenda is a public hearing to amend our North Andover personnel policy. Let me see. I need a motion to go into the public hearing.
Move to the open.
Did I miss?
Communications and announcements, I just have
Oh,
one
I'm sorry.
quick-
Yeah, I have
Oh,
one
back
too.
off on that. Okay, yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry, I should have asked.
This weekend was a big weekend for the Holiday Decorating Committee. We got the support of the North Andover Women's Club, and we had a terrific amount of kids from Merrimack College that helped us assemble the wreath to the pole, and I cannot thank them enough. They were fantastic. Kathy Valancourt, our chairman's wife, arranged for that, and it was great. So they will be going up soon, and I just wanted to give a big thank you to everybody who helped out put this together. Boy, it really made things go quite quickly, and it.
Well, what if somebody wants to sponsor a wreath? Are you already sold out?
We are, unfortunately, for those who haven't, we are sold out. We sold out very quickly this year, and we even expanded a few spots. I didn't tell the town manager, I just kind of cheated and did it. So-
I don't want to know.
No, I talked to Bruce about it. No, not,
Congratulations,
yeah.
that's awesome. You already sold out, wow.
Yeah, we sold out. So it'll be Christmas in town, will be holiday spirit, will be filling our streets shortly. So it's great. Thank you, and again, thank you to Kathy and all of those who helped out. It was a lot of fun.
I got one.
Okay.
This Friday night at North Andover High School, it will be the 4th annual Wrestle-Olympics. It is sponsored by the North Andover High School Best Buddies group, where they pair up 2 teams, Best Buddies and wrestlers from the booster as well as high school. All proceeds benefit the Best Buddies program at the high school. Starts at 6:30, $7 at the door. One of the most heartwarming events of the year. So join us if you can.
It is a tremendous event.
I just have one more. There was a very momentous occasion that happened a few nights ago. Unfortunately, I was not able to make it, but we have someone in our audience tonight who is a wonderful volunteer, and he helps out with everything, who had a big celebration. We have our emergency management director, Jeff Coco, had a big birthday, or coming up, but had a big celebration this weekend. So happy birthday to you from all of us, because you work so hard and for such little pay. So happy birthday.
Thank you.
Okay, we have another?
Well, we have our Santa Parade coming up, right? Before our next meeting, that's coming up. I saw that the festival committee is represented tonight, but you guys have a lot of exciting things coming up, and that's not on the agenda, but that's coming up on Saturday the 26th after Thanksgiving, kickoff at noon. We still travel the same route as always, right?
Yes.
I hope so, because that was in the ad for the Merchants Association.
Yep, absolutely.
So,
Great. Okay. Any others? Dawn? Any communication? Okay. I gotta be careful what I ask for there. I should have thought of that first. Okay, so next we'll be moving on to our public hearings. The first is a hearing to amend the personnel policy in North Andover. Do I have a motion to move to a public hearing?
Move to open the public hearing to receive comments on proposed amendments to the personnel policy affecting non-union personnel.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Okay, we are in the public meeting. Mr. Manager, would you like to review the changes, or is?
As is the
Kathy gonna-
practice, Kathy Darby is here as well, and I'm sure she'll comment on it momentarily. Every couple of years, we do a review of the personnel policy. More than a decade ago, town meeting turned the authority of amending the policy, used to be a personnel bylaw, over to the Board of Selectmen. It is my job under the charter and the bylaw to administer the policy on a day-to-day basis, and as such, also make recommendations back when it makes sense to make some changes. The last changes we made were in 2014 and made changes 2 years prior to that. So every other year or so, we reflect on the bylaw to see if anything's changed from a statutory perspective or things that we need to alter to make sure that from our employment point of view, we're doing things correctly. As stated by the chairman, the personnel policy oversees the day-to-day activities and relationship between the town and non-union employees, and it can affect union employees in cases, and contract employees in cases where something in the policy is not superseded by the contract itself. So a travel policy, as an example, is in the personnel policy, and it's the same travel policy for union and non-union employees. But mostly it's the non-union folks, which for the town represents approximately 30 to 35% of our entire workforce. So I did provide you an overview or sort of a bullet point of the major changes. Most of the other changes are either making sure statutorily we're keeping up the speed or grammatical, which we find those fairly often. But Ms. Darby can certainly go over those or answer any questions you have.
Did you have any questions about any of the updates? Pretty straightforward, mostly
Pretty, yeah.
regulatory driven.
No, I didn't have any
It's a lot of
questions.
material.
It is a lot of material.
It's a light read, isn't it?
Yes, yes.
You really threw our
think
new
I
town
might
council
have
right
had
into it,
one.
didn't you, Mr. Town Manager? Just
Yeah, I think it was a good opportunity to have Ms. Darby as the person who on a day-to-day basis has to deal with the language in this agreement, but certainly have another set of eyes, something that we hadn't traditionally done. The last couple of times we've done a review was helpful in terms specifically to the regulatory and some of the references that were helpful.
Yes, it was very helpful, and I appreciate the fact that we now have Ms. Egan on staff.
So you also gave us a handout tonight. Is there anything significant in here that we should be aware of?
No, there were two changes incorporated in the last version. So what happens is we not only post this as a public hearing, which is required, but something that's not required, but as a policy matter or practical matter, we do on a regular basis when we make changes. We submit the red line version to all of the employees, the exempt employees, and get their feedback. Gives us time to sort of get a response from some of the employees and take a look at the policy with a different set of eyes. So there's a couple of changes to that on the pay classification form, the position classification form. We recognize that a few of the positions were not in the proper grade. Didn't change their pay. It meant that the way they're being paid or the salary they're being paid was not properly graded. Sometimes that happens as pays change with COLAs and other factors. And the second was adding one or two, an example actually of how to properly calculate the bonus that's associated with the position of the Stevens Estate Director. The example, the language is a little complicated there, so Erica Forey in that particular case thought by inserting an example would make it easier to understand.
There's just one question, and it's probably just because I was curious. So the hearing officer, that was, scratched out, so, which was the town manager, and of course that makes sense. So what is the change there? Because then I see that you, later on, it says that you are, or your designee, so why was that?
The earlier reference to the hearing officer was not the proper place to put it. That actually was a change made by Attorney Egan. So it
Okay.
doesn't change the fact that I'm still the hearing officer.
Okay,
or
that's
my
what
designee.
confused me, because I'm like,
It's the
why is
fact
this
that it was
crossed out?
referenced in two different locations that created an apparent conflict within the document.
Okay, that's fine.
Any other questions? Any public comment or any?
I was a library page.
Okay, hearing no other comments, Tracy, do you have anything?
No, I'm
Okay.
good, thank you.
Can I have a motion to close the public hearing, please?
So moved.
All those in favor? Okay, the public hearing is now closed. We'll now have a vote to approve the changes. Or actually, are we looking for a vote to approval?
Yes.
Okay.
Move that the Board of Selectmen approve the proposed amendments to the personnel policy affecting non-union personnel.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, unanimously approved. Thank you.
Move to open the public hearing to receive comments on proposed National Grid poll petition for Middlesex Street.
I have a motion to go into a public hearing for a poll request. And a second. Any discussion?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Okay. We are now in a public hearing for this poll petition. You can stand at the podium, you can sit at the table if you feel more comfortable at the table.
I'd rather stand right now.
Okay.
Good evening, Council. My name is Paulo Saffler. I'm an engineer with National Grid, and I was sent here to discuss about the Middlesex Street pole installation. Does anybody have any questions about the location of the pole
No.
for Middlesex Street?
Could you explain a little bit about that location and
Sure.
why it's being placed? Why you're requesting that it's being placed where it is being placed?
Sure. This design, about 2 years ago, the company decided to improve the electrical circuit for that street, which we call storm hardening, which requires to replace the primary cables and all the poles along that line. And because we're going with a stronger configuration of the cables, we need an extra pole with a guy wire to support the tension, because there's a bend at that certain area. So that's why we need to install one more pole with an anchor, is to support that tension on the new poles.
Is the pole going to be put on the public way or private property?
The way that it's set up in the petition, it's supposed to be on the public right-of-way, but on the opposite side of the one existing pole.
So they're on the opposite side of the street of the existing pole?
Yeah, so pole
And how will the guide
129,
wire run?
there will be a wire connecting the two poles together.
Across the street, correct.
And it'll run across, obviously
It will
run
run,
across the street.
about 35 feet up in the air to the new pole, which will hold the existing pole in place. That's the idea of the new pole.
Okay. And the guide wire won't go to the ground at any point, or does it go to the ground?
It does go, the new pole will have an anchor with the guy wire
To the
going to the
ground.
ground, yes.
I know. That's what.
And is that on the sidewalk, or?
No, well, there was a letter from a lieutenant saying that he didn't want the pole closer to, between the sidewalk and the curb. He wanted it past the sidewalk, and that's, if you were to drive by today, which I did, the new locations are past the sidewalk. So it does not interfere with traffic or pedestrians.
Pedestrians.
You know, I have to tell you, I'm speaking for myself, but I think in the past, it was support from this board that there's just way too many poles going up in the neighborhoods, and the supports to anchor this going on, it just seems as though there's got to be a better way, that you've got to put either the poles in deeper or stronger or something, because it's just, it's a mess, and it ruins the trees, it ruins the looks of people's properties, and then we've got some poles that are leaning over, you've got double poles, I mean, there's got to be a better way.
Perfect, that's true. I agree with you with that.
So the existing pole, what's the issue with the existing pole? Is it leaning? Is it, it's just that there's
Well-
additional wires that have been put on it, so there's an additional load on the pole?
Correct, the type of cabling that we use is stronger with more tension on it. So if a tree were to fall on it, this type of system won't bring down the circuit and people won't lose power. So that's the intent of it. But because of the added tension, we need to support, at certain bends, we need extra support, either through anchoring, a push-brace pole, or something similar.
So let's hold that thought. So is there another way to provide additional support to that pole without putting another pole and a guide wire across the street? Is there a way to support that pole in place without providing another pole?
Right now, when I spoke with the engineer that did design this, he said that there wasn't any other way, the way he wrote it down.
But we've had National Grid before us before, and we did talk about other ways
Okay.
with stronger poles and laid in deeper into the ground, so that you don't need just a pole with a guide wire that's just actually just pulling on the rest of the poles to tighten it up. It's really troubling because it's just more and more and more. Yeah, I should.
It seems like they're worried about stabilizing these poles. They don't care about the double poles. I don't understand this. They're just laying there and they're, yeah, I can make a motion to approve this contingent upon all double poles being taken downtown first. That'd be easy.
I will say that certain poles, we will add extra thicker poles to support, certain equipment on the poles. But what we can also consider is within 5 years or later on within the lifespan of the pole will lean eventually because it's just a tendency of the pole itself.
So then you take it out and you put another one in that's straight?
That's
That would
what-
be ideal, yes. But
That's what I was going to ask, is why aren't we removing bad poles and putting new poles in instead of adding additional poles and not
Exactly.
fixing the problem?
at times we do replace poles, but I can't really respond to every single pole out there, but I know within certain conditions, we do try our best.
But sometimes it's after years of asking National Grid to fix poles that are leaning over somebody's house, or they're doubled up or whatever, and even then, you come back and we'll say, we're not going to approve anything until you fix this and this. We've been asking for years. It's frustrating, and I understand your business, I understand you're trying to be safe, but I really do think that you need to start thinking about a better way of doing this without just adding more and more poles to our streets. I don't know if there's anybody here who, has all the neighbors been informed of this?
Yeah.
That I know of.
We'll go to the neighbors in a second.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, definitely I'll get to you. Let's finish the comments on the board first.
Can I just have one clarifying question? 'Cause I'm sorry. Is there going to be a guide wire on private property or no?
The way that it's shown in the petition, no.
So what is the 6-foot connection from near the pole onto the property at 113 Middlesex?
Well, the way that I was explained by the engineer, it's not going to be on the private property. It's on the public right of way. But the drawing, perhaps the scale is off, but the anchor is supposed to be on public property.
So are you indicating that the drawing included with the public hearing is now different than, that there's a different drawing than one submitted with the public hearing? Or is the 6-foot line shown on 113 Middlesex not accurately depicted?
See,
I
I
think-
understood it to be on private property, that's why I asked the question.
No, I understand your question. I spoke with
But I still have the old map.
the engineer, and he did say that it was supposed to be on public property, not on the private way here.
So why isn't the engineer here tonight? Does he have another commitment? Or, I mean, if it's his work and you're presenting his work,
It's, sometimes he's not available, so the next person in the lineup, which is me, is sent out. And it's also a question of where, this is a contractor as well, so,
this is a what?
a contracted engineer that works for the company. I worked in North Andover, so for me, it's an easier commute as well.
Okay. But you work for National Grid?
Yes, absolutely.
Other questions?
I think that just to say, I think that it's worth recognizing that the police department did not recommend approval for this new pole placement. They expressed concerns about its proximity to the road and safety. They encouraged National Grid to contact the homeowner. I'm assuming that the homeowner they were referring to is even here tonight. I don't know if there was a conversation, but given the response that the police department got, they said that National Grid was going to move forward anyways, despite the recommendation that you speak with the homeowner about possibly moving that pole farther away from the road. So I know that the whole reason you're here is for safety, right?
Absolutely.
And the police department's recognized that this location is not ideal for other safety reasons, and they've presented an alternative that National Grid has not pursued at this point.
Okay. Well, I will say that, to me, looking at the sketch here, the 1-foot distance from the curb does not seem accurate with what's in the actual the site where they stake the pole, and the location of it is past the sidewalk, so, which is what the lieutenant recommended. He didn't recommend it being so close to the curb, so to some extent, actually, this is kind of inaccurate, the distances here.
So what you've given us this evening is inaccurate. You haven't followed up with the police department either, because to let them know that you took their recommendations? Is that what I'm hearing?
I personally did not.
No, I
You got
understand,
the
but...
short straw, we get it.
Yeah, you got
It
the,
happens
yeah,
often.
we understand that.
It always happens.
But, because this letter is back from October 24th,
Yeah.
you've made adjustments based on the lieutenant's recommendation?
I personally didn't.
No.
No,
The
no,
current
because-
locations of the stakes for the pole and the anchor that's shown here has been moved further away from the curb.
Okay, but nobody...
We don't have the current plans then in front of us.
Okay, so,
I was from they
That's
make the
enough.
changes to this sketch.
When are these plans
I don't have a
dated?
date. The date is December 1st, 2014 at the bottom right, so.
Oh, okay.
But, I mean, so in
See that.
fairness,
All right.
the letter from the lieutenant doesn't say how specifically far he'd like you to go. He does recommend, though, that you contact the owner of the property and move it on the other side of the sidewalk. And so you're saying you're still on the side of the sidewalk that is right before the street, right? So you're putting the pole between the street and the sidewalk in that strip, correct?
Well, by the stake, the location of the stakes, it's past the sidewalk. It's not like you said, it's not next to the curb.
Oh, so it is moved on the other side of the sidewalk?
It is staked past the sidewalk.
So you got an easement from the property owner,
I personally did not.
but that, an easement was obtained?
No.
Okay.
Okay, and these plans are actually dated December 1st, 2014, 2 years old.
Yeah, they're,
So they're not showing reflecting anything that the police department had recommended. Okay, other questions from the board?
I guess I'd just like to hear from the property.
Yeah.
I can share with you a contact, Joe Morocco. I'm not sure if you spoke with him before, and he,
Ray, do we know?
no.
Okay.
I think no matter where the meeting goes, ultimately, the board's going to want to see, anytime we submit an application, it should have the most current information. And
Absolutely, I agree with
that's
you.
part of the struggle here, is you can't have a public hearing when we're depicting a plan which is approaching 2 years old and doesn't any longer reflect, because then everything said in the public meeting is irrelevant, because we're looking at a plan that no longer reflects the actual activity.
So, yes, you have your chance. Come up, if you can come up to the podium, introduce yourself, name and address.
Oh, okay.
You're welcome to sit at the table or sit at the podium.
I can stand, thank you. I'm actually not the homeowner, I'm the attorney for the homeowner.
Oh, my.
The homeowner's right there, Helen Morikanian. I'm Amy Slade, and I represent her, and she had asked me to come tonight because she's just been contacted by National Grid, actually by your contractor. I'm sorry? No, it was Frank Silva, correct?
Thomas Kane from Consolidated.
Okay, so, and it looks like from the stakes in the ground, and I was at the house tonight, both the pole and the guide wire are actually going to be on Helen's property. So that's private property. We haven't even seen a proposed easement, and the plan has changed. I guess originally the guide wire was going to be 7 feet in from the pole, and now they have reduced it to 6 feet. But Helen has quite a few trees around where they want to put it, and so there would be considerable effect to those trees. Trees would need to either be trimmed back or cut down. And Helen is not inclined to do that at this point, especially since she doesn't have all the information she needs from National Grid. So
Okay.
Based on that, I would move,
I don't know if you have questions for us that we could answer.
Well, when you say it's on Helen's property, what is the standard distance from the road in that is still considered public way? I just want to make sure it's clear of that, too.
Could be fair. It could be a minimum, it's the width of the sidewalk at
Could
any
be.
green. This seems like it's moved from the original plan that
Yes.
most poles are somewhere in the sidewalk.
Yeah.
This has been moved further in onto private, I don't have a plan in
Okay.
front of me, but onto
Right.
private property, 8 feet, 10 feet
The
from the
pole
sidewalk.
itself looks like it would be right on the edge of the sidewalk in her property, but then the guide
guide
wire
wire.
would be at least 6 feet in.
Into her property.
Into her property. And there's a lot of trees right there, so to be able to put the pole in and to put the guide wire in, I'm thinking some trees might have to be cut down. And,
Okay.
That's a major task for a homeowner, obviously.
I'm making a motion to vote no on this
But we have to close.
Yeah, we have to
Oh,
close.
sorry, ahead of myself. Move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to close the public hearing. All those in favor?
Aye.
It's just,
Okay.
so, just, and I'm.
No, no,
choose any
okay,
direction.
I'll
just-
amend it.
If it's continued, then at least, then given some direction to the utility, then it might
Well, yeah,
allow
that's
us
what I
to.
would like to do is, I mean, you can make your motion and then we can discuss it afterwards, so.
Well, okay, I'll amend my motion to, I moved that National Grid work with the homeowner and see if they could come to a reasonable resolution. What type of time do we think we need to make that happen?
They already started some communications.
Right, but, sure, we'd asked for information from National Grid, we still have not even gotten anything back. So we're waiting for that information. A lot more needs to be shared with us before we move forward.
So I'm gonna be confused by your motion.
I'm confused by the motion.
Roseanne, why don't you just continue it to the December
Because
5th?
we're either, we can either move to
Kick it to the next
approve
meeting.
or reject, but
And then it can be
I'm open to make,
Well, Andrew suggested that we had a continuance.
If you continue it to the next meeting, then if for
Right.
some reason no
Yeah,
satisfactory
motion to
resolution
continue.
hasn't been found, then it certainly can be continued again. That's-
Well, that's pretty much what I was getting at, that the move to see that if there can be a resolution, and if not, that at that time we could take a vote whether to approve or disapprove. But it seems like there's too many things that just aren't settled. And I think, and if there is a possible taking, that's a whole different, you know, I'm not so inclined to support a taking. But
So are you, the motion, I'm still a little bit confused by your motion. Are you motioning to continue? To a
continue to
date
give them an
certain?
opportunity.
To-
Well, that's what I was asking, what date do we want? You think they can
I think
handle
this-
this
well,
at our next
just
meeting?
to clarify, if it's on private property and there's a taking, it's now a private matter between the utility. The board is no longer a party to that. You
Yeah.
don't approve takings of private property unless the government is doing it, not the utility. So I would say you put it to December 5th. If there's a reason it needs to be continued beyond that, we can do that, but I'd move it to the next meeting, which is December 5th.
I will accept your suggestion, not as a friendly amendment, because you can't do that, but your suggestion. And thank you for clarifying the language. But there's a lot of moving parts to try to get you all back on the right page. There's just too many things, and some
So
of them
we
are a
have
little
a-
bit distressing.
We have a motion to continue till our next meeting, which is December 5th at 7 o'clock in this room. Do we have a second? We have a second? All right, by way of discussion, I'd just like to start off. What I would recommend to you, sir, is, go back to the engineer, if he's still around, this 2-year-old plan, or maybe he's not even still around anymore. Look at other possibilities to shore up that other pole, other than running a guide wire, because as you've clearly heard, that's not one of our preferences, to put additional poles in. You said it yourself, in 5 years, a pole would have to have maintenance, so now we'd have 2 poles that need maintenance in 5 years. So, or whatever the time frame was, I thought you said 5 years, but we don't have to argue that. The point is, now we've got 2 poles instead of 1. So if there's a way that we can look into shoring up that pole, other than putting a second pole in with a guide wire, that's something that, we would prefer to see than to, continue to proliferate poles and guide wires. Also, it would behoove you to work with the resident and make sure that things, that they understand what you're doing, and get us a set of updated plans that are not 2 years old, that comply with what the lieutenant on the police department has requested, as well as, working with the neighbor. Any other comments?
A lot of stuff, thank you.
Okay, all those in favor of the continuance?
Aye.
Okay. All right, next, we have another poll petition on Johnson Street. Do I have a motion to open the public hearing?
So moved.
Okay, should we read this verbatim here?
Move to open the public hearing and receive comments on proposed proposed National Grid poll petition for Middlesex Street.
No.
I'm sorry, for
Johnson,
Johnson.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Sir, you are on again. Lucky you.
On Johnson Street, there is a pole that has a guy wire that's attached to a tree from 174 Johnson Street, and that resident had asked us to remove that guy wire to their tree. So we are complying with that. But to support the tension from the wires on this pole, we would ask the town to install a push brace pole onto this pole on 1341.
Is that what that is? The pole pushing against the other pole?
Correct.
Ooh.
We don't like those either.
We hate those too. Those probably more than the guide wire, to tell you the truth. So it's one pole, and then you have another pole.
Yeah, like making a triangle pretty much
Yeah.
onto it. Well,
It feels like it's in the middle of the street, too.
I drove by today. It is on the corner.
Now, 2 poles, there's nothing in here from the police department. Is that on purpose, or do we know why there's nothing in here from
When
them?
was it requested of them? Well,
Nothing was requested of them?
No, I'm asking when it was requested of them.
Oh,
Yeah. This drawing is from 10/6/16, so
couple weeks.
a couple weeks old, a month old, give or take.
And again, I guess the question is there a better way or a more aesthetically pleasing way to shore up that pole? Can we sink it in deeper? Can we get a, you know, instead of having that type of a configuration, which really does not look really good, because now you've got a pole that's already leaning, and then you've got another pole pushing up against it. So they both look,
When I looked at that site, I mean, ideally for us, is installing an anchor is probably the best way. Like I said, it's the same type of pole, cable design on top of it, so there is the added tension for that area. So that's why we do need some kind of guying support for that pole. And it's a dead-end pole, so the lines start over there. Whereas typically poles where the lines just go across the top, you don't necessarily need any guying unless there's a curve. So this is a tough location because it's in the corner, and the opposite side, it's the street, so we can't put anything on the street, of
So the
course.
guide wire goes across Johnson and not across Sutton Hill?
Yes, and no, because the way that it's bending over there, it's not 90 degrees. It crosses Sutton Hill to the other side, our existing lines.
And again, why are we not taking this down and putting in a good one?
What do you mean?
What do I mean? Instead of doubling up, fix the bad one.
Fix the one that might be.
So it's one.
Be, what is it, the listing or whatever, or put something stronger in.
Back on the edge.
Yeah,
I know,
don't
I
think
hate
it's
that, and then they
that
dangle.
necessarily. I mean, there's all kinds of issues out there that could be, if there's a turn or air rights or going over private properties, perhaps that's why they have the pole on the
Air
other side.
rights.
Well, that's how the line curves. It's not a
Okay.
support pole like
Okay.
Middlesex.
Understand.
Can I show you how it looks like here in my map?
Yeah, that'd be helpful.
Okay.
do we have the map?
I have the map, but I don't have the line.
This is Kelly Driscoll Street.
So the overhead wires cross the street.
Oh, it crosses there.
Yeah, and then it keeps going down here. So this.
Where's
pole
the
here-
tension wire?
This is the tension wire. This is the.
It is.
The energy wires, yes.
But where's the guide wire?
Yeah, the guide wire, I'm
There's a
sorry.
tree here,
Across the
and
street.
it crosses. the
Lord
street, probably
above.
150 feet.
And you know what, this is the other thing
What?
that's troubling. This is, I believe, the front of their house. I'm pretty sure I know which house, it's a gray cape. This is the front of their house that you're putting that pole.
Well, the pole will be, the push brace is on the Johnson Street side. There's a retaining wall here, a stone wall.
Oh, great, so we're gonna wreck the,
And it's more here.
Oh, my
than anything,
Lord.
and it's gonna be there.
so you take it on someone's land?
No, this is,
No.
But we're gonna distort
Well,
the
it's here. This is
pretty
what-
view.
I'm not sure if it's gonna be distorting it, but that's how it works right now. This pole over here, that's just. the
So we're kind of
existing
not all seeing what you're drawing there.
conditions. Yes, so let me show you.
I don't like
Makes it
any of it.
difficult.
Is it gonna
Okay, so
obscure
this is
view when you're
the
coming down
existing pole,
Sutton Hill? or
and
try-
it's supported.
No,
with,
not
The
really.
guy wire going to a tree, you can take around
Not
here.
really.
What we want to add is a push brace to this pole here. I just drew it here because that's more how it looks like. And to support the
Both of them.
energy wires here, yeah, because this is how it goes down the street.
So these are just the wires, these are just
Yeah,
the
this is
electric wires?
existing
This is
wire. I
That's
just wanted to
utilities,
show-
yeah, okay.
But
And that's why we have to put the push brace in this direction because it's pulling the pole towards the street here.
You know
So we
something?
lose the guide wire,
Now he's-
we lose the guide wire going to the tree, but we gain the push pole. Don't worry
It's
about it.
some give and take to it, yes.
Yeah. I'll ask again, are there any other methods that we can investigate to shore up that pole that doesn't require the installation of a second pole?
Typically, no, because the way that these wires are pre-tensioned, they would call them spacer cable, is a higher tension than conventional, and it's just to prevent, when the trees fall on these cables, it's not gonna bring down poles or other cables and knock down power for the neighborhood.
How high is the brace? How high is the brace?
Typically, it needs to be, well,
Half the height of the pole?
half the poles. The pole's 40 feet, 6 feet deep, about 18 feet up.
And what's the span of it on the bottom? How far is it from the pole? So how
That's
far
also
is, what's
It would
this?
take half too.
So about
About 18 feet.
or 18
It's
feet?
usually that. If it's more, then it's really not doing anything.
But
It has
that's-
to be about a certain
But
size.
you don't know exactly, you're just,
No, that's from what I've done before. That's what I typically issue, is about halfway on the pole.
Okay. All right, take that back. Thank you.
Anybody else want to say?
No, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions from the board, comments? Okay, are there any neighbors, abutters for this project here?
in the future, honestly, it would be helpful not to just have a sketch, but to maybe actually have photographs of where it's going to be in front of the house.
Okay. That's
Okay. Yeah, that's a good suggestion.
Because this depersonalizes it, but when you can see it in front of somebody's front door,
Oh, Phil's got it pulled up on Google
Yeah, I
Maps.
did, I pulled it, because Rosemary's right, the way that the Driscoll's house
yeah, it's the
is
Driscoll's
situated,
house.
even though they're Johnson Street residents, it would appear to a driver that they live on Sutton Hill Road, because that's where they face. And it's actually even at an angle, so they almost face exactly where the pole would be going up.
That's what it's gonna take away the,
Okay.
It's
Can we have a
nearly on.
motion to, everyone have all their questions out? Everyone's given any testimony they want? Do we have a motion to close the public hearing?
move to close the public hearing or
Okay. All those in favor? All right, the public hearing is now closed. Okay, how do we want to approach this one? Is there more information anybody's looking for? Would it be good to see pictures? Would you want to have, to go back and explore alternative methods of supporting that pole other than installing another pole?
Maybe all of the above.
All of the above.
Now, the only reason is that the neighbor, right, this was because of a neighbor not wanting it connected to their tree, right?
Right.
Yeah, it's on their property.
How did you tree in the first place?
Good question. I'm not sure where that
They
standard
did that
arose.
years ago. I actually
Yeah.
had one on my tree, and honestly, I'd much rather have had that than a telephone pole.
Well, so then-
Well, this neighbor gets
Yeah.
rid of everything though because he's
Right.
moving it up.
I mean,
A lot of times the tree comes
that was a
down.
preference, yeah. From my situation, the tree was just, it was old and it needed to come down. But
Okay.
Another feeling.
Well, I move that we request that National Grid coming back on December 5th, as it is, come back on this petition as well with maybe possible alternatives.
Second that,
Yeah?
Okay.
well, perhaps a friendly amendment would be that coming up with alternatives that may have as minimal of an impact as possible on the neighbors, because of the way the houses are situated, but on the neighbor's line of sight.
Amendment accepted.
So it sounds like we're moving to a continuance for this one as well, to December 5th, 7 o'clock here, with the, as part of that continuance, that National Grid explore alternative methods of supporting that pole that are less intrusive to the neighborhood and to the folks, to the residents. Do we have did I get that right, Tracy?
Yes, you did. It was perfect. Thank
Okay, do I have a second?
second.
Okay, any further discussion?
you. You missed it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, sir, we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Yes, I will be here.
All right, thank you.
Don't worry, you're not the first one that we've done this to, so don't feel like you've
You're just the
failed your
next,
mission.
you're, as they say, the next man up.
I know, you had good
I'll go ahead
stuff.
and contact info, so if you have other concerns in general.
Thank you
Okay.
very much.
Could you give a copy of that?
We have Joseph.
Yeah, we
Okay.
communicate.
We talk to him every couple of weeks.
Okay.
He's just trying to take it off his plate.
All right, so we're done with our public hearings for tonight. Next on the agenda, we have consent items. First is to vote to sign some easements around the Boston Hill area and Boston Street. Mr. Manager, would you like to speak to these?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, as you may recall, on August 29, 2016, I came to the board and requested a vote to amend an easement granted to the town by the owners of 32 Boston Hill Road, and further asked the authority to proceed with amending easements on 45 Boston, and a release of an easement on 45 Boston, and amendment of the easement on 10 Boston, all associated with a sewer installation that was done some years ago with an expectation that certain easements were needed. And at the time, in a review of those easements more recently, we recognized that the easement language allowed for the town to access the property for broader reasons than just the utility easement. In fact, they were referred to as public ways easements. So that raised some concerns, and in the case of specifically 32 Boston Hill Road, the nature and size of the easement wasn't appropriate to deal with the fact that a sewer line was crossing. So as a result of that, a couple months ago, we talked about that. You gave me the authority to proceed, and so we're here tonight seeking approval. These documents have been reviewed by town council and council for the owner of 32 Boston Hill Road, who are seeking a series of different steps, which is identified in my cover letter to you. The first is a release of the easement of 32 Boston Hill Road. This releases the original easement. Second is granted the easement for 32 Boston Hill Road. This grants a new easement with the correct easement area and scope as originally intended. Number 3, amend the easement for 10 Boston Street. This limits the scope to the installation and maintenance of the sewer line, removing the public ways component. And 4th is the release easement of 45 Boston Street, because this easement is no longer necessary for the sewer line that was installed.
That was where the sewer line never really crossed.
Correct.
A piece of the
Yes.
property that was expected. Okay.
I do believe that the attorney for 32 Boston Hill Road is here as well.
Okay. Would you like to say something, sir?
I just appreciate the town manager's assistance and as well as the Board of
Could
Selectmen.
you just introduce yourself? Sorry.
Excuse me, I'm Paul Ross, attorney for the owners of 32 Boston Hill Road, the Devons. And I've reviewed the documents and certainly approved them, and my clients have signed them. So I think we're all set. I'm just here to answer any questions that you may have, but I appreciate the board's assistance in resolving this.
Okay, thank you. Attorney Ross. Okay. So I noticed some, like, as he has said, the Devons have signed and had theirs notarized. There are others in here that are not. Do those need to be notarized before or can they, is there a sequence? Oh, I'm sorry.
We're the owners of 45 Boston Street are here.
Okay, would you like to come up and say something?
I'm Norman Hawley, my wife Maria. We're the owners of 45 Boston Street, and we have the paperwork. If anyone has a good old stamp, we could do it right now for taking
We
care
have our
of it.
town clerk here, and we also have...
Resident,
Unfortunately, we did not receive this paperwork until the afternoon of the 12th, so it's a very quick turn on our side. We didn't have an opportunity to get them notarized at all.
Okay,
So.
that's fine. We have a notary right here.
we have a notary.
And it's really just removing an easement from your property, so
Right,
you
which was
don't...
never used, but,
Yeah.
So, okay?
Okay,
Great.
appreciate that, and
Thank you.
we can certainly take care of that tonight. Right, Larry? Can we take care of that? Okay. Any other comments from anybody? Okay, do we have a motion?
Move that the Board of Selectmen sign the release of easement for 32 Boston Hill Road and accept and sign the grant of easement for 32 Boston Hill Road from Francis and Sharon Devon as presented.
All those in favor?
Aye. Move that the Board of Selectmen accept and sign the amended easement for 10 Boston Street as presented.
Do we have a second? Any discussion? This one has not been signed and notarized by the owner?
It's in the process.
Oh, it's in the process, okay.
Yeah, still getting that.
Thank you. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye. Move that the Board of Selectmen sign the release of easement for 45 Boston Street as presented.
discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we're good, so we'll take care of that right here. While you're doing that, we'll move on to appointments. So, first on the list for appointments, we have an appointee to the Sustainability Committee, John David Dishaw. Would someone like to speak to that?
Yeah, but, again, Mr. Dishaw has offered to help out with the Sustainability Committee. It's a committee that needs a lot of people to do all the great work that they do, and I would certainly move approval for John Dishaw.
Great.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The next one, I can speak to it, is Council on Aging from Joseph McCarthy. He's already been actively involved with the senior center, and I believe he would be a good candidate to be added to the Council on Aging.
Okay, we have a
Second.
motion. Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
And the other one on Commission on Disability Issues is Brenda Savory. Brenda served on this committee a few years back, did a great job. She's very passionate about it and has quite a bit of knowledge, and it would be great to have her back on that committee. So I would move approval.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye. And
Okay.
the final one, Cable TV Advisory Committee, Shane Woodruff. Again, it's a committee that could use extra help with all the good work that they do, and I would move approval for Shane Woodruff to serve on the Cable Advisory Committee.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And as we always say, and have said very recently, thank you to all our volunteers in town. The town runs great and smooth because we have so many dedicated people that are willing to step up and help out.
Absolutely.
Tracy, you want to add to that?
Yeah.
We will grind to a
Here we
screeching
go.
halt
There's her
without
line.
them.
There's her line.
Thank you. But yes, very, we really, really appreciate all the volunteers. And if anybody is looking for volunteer opportunities, we do have a place on the town website where you can go and look and see what opportunities are available and become involved. Okay, next, a request from the Festival Committee to use the town common from 4 to 7 on Sunday, November 27th, 2016, for the official Christmas tree lighting celebration. Mr. Coco, are you going to speak to that?
Thank you once again. This will be our third year hosting the tree lighting on the common, and it's been growing every year. So this year we're going to be adding about 3 different music shows to it, choral singing, the high school, Real School of Music bands, an a cappella group is coming in. We'll have the tree lighting. Hopefully we'll have our Grand Marshal from the Santa Parade throwing the ceremonial switch to light the affair.
That's what you're going to say, throwing the first pitch.
That too, Ray. Why not? Last year we had a phenomenal crowd for those of you who attended. And this year, we're hoping that it'll be equal to or exceed what we had last year. We're actually going to have a stage there. We're going to have Trombley's come in and set up so that people can be seen and the performers can be seen, because last year got
Santa got mobbed.
Dick knows.
Yeah,
Got very confusing. Got lost. Absolutely, Phil knows. It was really crowded. So hopefully this year we'll have it a little better organized to handle all of that, and hopefully everything will go well.
But, were we able to address some of the lighting? Because it was a little bit dark.
Yes, E.J. Foles, Lieutenant E.J. Foles from the police department had suggested that where emergency management has a set of stanchion generator lights that the police department's in custody of. I had thought maybe of using that, but it may be a little too aggressive for the scene. We don't want to blind people.
You're under arrest?
We don't want to blind people when we shut them off. But they have these new Pelican lights that they're going to set up over there, which should give enough perimeter lighting to be able to make it so nobody runs into any difficulty. That should work out well, and hopefully from there everything will go according to plan.
Thank you so much, Joe.
All right, thanks, Jeff.
Any other questions, or?
No?
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, do we have a motion?
Move approval.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All set, thank you, gentlemen. Okay, next, vote to proceed with the plan to underground wires in the downtown area as described in Chapter 170 of the town bylaw. Very exciting.
It is exciting.
Mr. Chairman. So back in 1999, town meeting approved a bylaw to address or encourage or prepare for the undergrounding of utilities in 3 areas, two very well-known areas as it relates to folks like myself who are newer to the community. The common, otherwise known as the old common area in the bylaw, and the downtown area. And obviously, as everybody is aware, the old common area project was completed in 2012. It's remarkably well received. We get a lot of feedback by those folks who are visitors or longtime residents here, and felt with everything else we're doing to improve the Main Street corridor, that it's now time to proceed with the downtown area as identified in the bylaw in 1999. You may recall back several months ago, as the process for getting the surcharge completed through National Grid for the common was wrapping up, although the Verizon surcharge continues, I indicated to you that I would come back several months from now and ask for your support in this regard so that we can proceed. It truly has an opportunity to be transformative for the downtown. After all the discussion of wires and guide wires, all you need to do is go outside any day and walk down any section of Main Street, and you recognize the plethora of wires and sort of, I would like to call it noise, like infrastructure noise. It just really impedes your ability to look at Main Street in the way we really would like to see it. So if you notice in my cover letter, we reached out, Erica Forey and I reached out to major property owners within the area. They are wildly supportive of the project. They believe that it will help them in the long term, help the community in the long term. So I'm strongly encouraging that we begin the process of undergrounding the wires in the downtown area.
And that's going to Water Street too, right?
That would be Main Street from Sutton Street to Merrimack, 200 feet from Main on Waverly, 1st, 2nd, and Olive School Street, and Water Street to High Street. So it would connect up with the Mills project.
The ones that are.
Yeah,
Yep.
This part.
Exactly.
That's where we expanded the reach on water.
It's time.
It's time. It is time.
All right, it's past time.
No, it's
Perfect.
starting
It's
tonight.
It's only 99. We're right on schedule.
Oh, Lordy.
99?
99.
All right, do
I
we
had here
have,
in
who would like to
1999.
make this historic motion to proceed?
So moved. Do you want me to read it out?
The whole thing? No.
Is it long? Why
No,
not?
no, but
Let's read it out.
I'm a so moved person. Move approval of continuing with the downtown area undergrounding utilities project to the next phase of this terrific project.
Motion, do you have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, great, thank you.
Enthusiastic, aye.
Okay, do we have a motion to move into licensing?
So excited.
Motion to move into licensing?
Yeah.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we are now in
We
licensing.
are in licensing, and we have one item on the agenda this evening, or rather, one applicant on the agenda this evening asking for 4 one-day wine and malt licenses. So we have Merrimack College before us asking for Thursday, November 17th from 6 to 11 p.m., Friday, November 18th from 6 to 11 p.m., Saturday, November 19th from 1 to 5 p.m., and Saturday, November 19th, so the same day, from 6 to 11 p.m. The police department has reviewed everything. Everything seems to be in order. Is there anybody from Merrimack College here this evening to speak to this? No, as is always the case. No.
They just try it.
Move that the Board of Selectmen, acting as licensing commissioners, approve the 4 one-day wine and malt licenses for Merrimack College for on-stages performances on November 17th, 18th, 19th, as presented.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Passed unanimously. Do I hear a motion to leave licensing?
Most of them licensing.
Second.
Aye. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Out of licensing.
Okay, we're going to move on to old business. So the first is a request for the North Andover Police Department. We took up a request from them last meeting to add some stop signs along the Green Street corridor. It looks like they have now submitted a letter requesting that, or suggesting that they're going to monitor that area and not proceed with those signs that were not previously approved. There was one that was approved that we'll go forward with, but the balance of them, the police department has suggested that they will monitor the area and not put up the additional signs. So I don't believe we need a motion on that. That's just, they've withdrawn that request. Anything to add to that? Okay. Next, we have a request from the Republican Town Committee to add a member to their Board of Registrars. Martha Salisbury, who is the current member on that board, representing the Republican Town Party, is retiring from that board. And again, we vehemently thank her for her service, her many, many years of dedicated service on that board, and wish her the best in her retirement from that board, and she can enjoy not having to do that anymore. But we have a request from the Republican Town Committee with, they have put up 3 names: Alexandra Mazzina of 405 Johnson Street, Ed Tripp of 262 Boston Street, and Michael Quinlan of 40 Cedar Lane. Do we have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move that the board approve Alexandra Mazzina to replace Martha Salisbury as the Republican registrar for the Board of Registrars.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, again, thank you, Alexandra, for your service and to the town.
Having said that, I'd like to thank all of the people that worked with our town clerk, Madam Clerk, and the registrars, and, you know, it was a massive, massive, massive undertaking, and congratulations. I'm just curious, is that the biggest in the one that we've
Yeah,
had?
maybe we could, since
Do a
Joyce is still
recap.
here, maybe we can get a summary of the election. and
Well,
how
I
everything
think with an 80% turnout, that was lower than you would have anticipated, but I think that was because of having over 7,200 early voting ballots. And the challenge with that is that's every day, including Saturday, a couple of 8 o'clocks. And your normal preparation time of getting ready for the for the presidential election is usually that time frame. So I cannot tell you how many wonderful people stepped to the plate. And I have to thank Linda McHugh. We had 7,200 envelopes that needed to be opened and ballots taken out and ballots put through our machines. That's 7,200. You try to open 7,200 envelopes, and the state went to an extreme of making these envelopes so that they would never be opened by human hands, and, that's, but I mean, when you look at the daunting task of when you put out 7,200 ballots, those are the early voting ballots, had to go through central tabulation, and Wendy Wakeman and Linda and everybody they seem to reproduce in front of your eyes. And as I said, we did very well to be able to get the last of the ballots through 9:45. Our machines were absolutely flawless. They didn't miss a beat. They're 22 years old, and the central tabulation went very well. But the idea of having 7,200 people come and vote, put it in an envelope, and then you had to alphabetize it. When you're alphabetizing ballots at close to midnight, you need an 8-year-old there to say, yes, a P comes before R or whatever it does. So the whole process when you're looking at it, the only wonderful thing about it was the gratitude of the people who early voted. They loved it. You just logistically have to come up with a completely different way of having superhuman staffing. But when you watch people step to the plate and just, what can I do to help, and open envelopes. Staples was a little concerned when I came in and asked for the sharpest letter openers that they had. So I explained to them I was not any kind of mass murderer or anything. We needed the best letter openers possible on election day. But you can't say enough for the wonderful people of this town who made, and the people who showed up every day. I had people that came every day, and just, you'd look down and there would be 1,000 ballots that had to go into the state system.
There were mounds of them.
Mounds of them. You looked at it and you were sort of overwhelmed that somebody was coming in the middle of the night and just...
And Joyce, you had a turnout in raw numbers of more people than many communities much larger than us had, especially our neighbors.
And other clerks noticed the fact that we would have anticipated on this kind of presidential election 90% turnout. So I think the idea that you had people that came at their convenience, and they were able to do that. And as you said, you learn a lot about logistics of how you would be able to better implement it, because this is the first time you've had early voting. But as I said, 7,200 envelopes is just,
Now, and
you
absentees.
see them in your sleep, don't you?
2,000, over 2,000 absentees besides.
Yes, exactly.
Now-
And overseas ballots, too.
Are the days set by the Secretary of State's, or did the registrars and the clerk get together and say, we will be open for early voting this and this day?
You were mandated to offer early voting through all regular, normal business hours. We went and we did the entire day on Saturday, the
Yeah,
29th.
that's-
We also did the 2 Tuesday nights. They were normally open till 6 till 8 o'clock. And that's when you would look down at the bin, and it would just keep growing. That was very popular time for people to come on those Tuesday
Yeah,
nights.
courtesy, because not every community did that. And there was one night where there was literally a line at
Lines of
6:30
people,
coming
right.
out that Tuesday night, the first Tuesday night.
And you moved into a brand-new building. I mean, we can't thank the town manager enough, who just would look at had put the tables here and do that. I mean, we opened the doors on Monday morning for early voting, was the 24th, and we moved into the building. And, but the fact of the appreciation, people would go by and wave and say, this is fantastic, you know, now we're going to breakfast or lunch or whatever. It's,
Social
it's,
voting.
To go drink.
Yeah.
it's the only grateful thing. But as I said, you just watched the central tabulation and the people feeding ballots through of what you had to do. That worked extremely well, because otherwise you would have had 7,000 ballots trying to get in between the regular voting ballots and the absentees. And, you know, it was a steady day on election day.
You know what was great about it is because the building was open and it was new. I heard from so many people who loved the early voting, and then they oohed and ahed and gushed over the building. So it was kind of, it was
It was a welcoming
it really
experience,
did.
right?
It
They
was
were
brought the
very.
community
And it
together
gave
during a
people a
very
chance to-
contentious,
It was,
election.
yes,
and-
we've never seen anything quite like this. You know,
Mr. Chairman, Joyce said they bought these machines 22 years ago. I want to know that was.
I do
wanna know
remember
what?
when we bought those.
22-year-old machines that people that, and I mean, we obviously have to replace them, but the brand-new machines took twice as long to have a ballot process. So those poor little AccuVote machines got an extra little bit of ink, and we just thank them for that.
To get seen ballots by hand had to be counted.
That was 1994.
Because that was
13,943 ballots were counted by hand, with 85 items on them. So, you
But do you
know,
still feel as though paper ballots are the right way to go? Because if there is a problem, you have a document that you can...
you always have the paper, and I think we would never in Massachusetts willingly go to something that you touched a screen
Yeah,
automatically.
there were horror stories with that.
Tape came out. We always have the paper, and we always can take those in communities that were, I hate to say, lucky enough to get selected for random audits.
For instance,
I
we're
heard
doing
one
random
registrar
audits
was
tomorrow.
like not looking forward to,
Well, you
not that
should-
anything was bad, it's just you have to do it all over again.
I don't think we could take lugging another box of ballots and doing all that. We had no concern about what it would do that, but that's another 3 or 4 or 5 days of having to continue on. I mean, we'll still be, we'll be certifying on the 21st, but you can't imagine, and if people don't think every vote counts, even though you might have all your totals in, still going through every ballot and hand counting anything that might not have gone through the machine because somebody made X's instead of little ovals. It's just, it's a remarkable experience that even though the entire universe thinks it's over, that every person's vote that voted here in North Andover is respected and cared for. And that's because you have wonderful, wonderful registrars who...
And
we have
volunteers and staff.
volunteers coming in and my election workers, you know,
Yeah,
I mean.
no, yeah.
So when you're
Work
there
hard.
at 5:30 a.m., and I can't say enough for DPW being here, and Keith had people here at 4:15 in the morning to make sure everything was taken right out to the truck and up to the school. It's fantastic when you can have cheerful, organized people at 4:15.
It's great.
Well, I guess I'll say thank you to you because you spent countless hours on this, and you're a tremendous leader of all these people. All these people that did this tremendous job had a tremendous leader in you, and
Absolutely.
getting it all done. And you did a fantastic
support from
Fantastic job.
people like Linda and Carrie, and we look forward to our new registrar, who, if that didn't scare anybody away, nothing will.
And we
Our new registrar is bilingual and speaks Spanish, which will
Wonderful.
be a great asset to
Great,
our
great.
community as well. Yeah.
Thank you, Joyce, for
Thank you.
everything.
Good stuff.
Okay, we have no new business. Public comment, we have 2 members of the public here. Do we have any comments? No? All right, no public comment. We'll move to the town's manager's report.
I'll just make 2 comments. One, a summary of the 9 different items that are on there. One is that under reported, if you notice, we had 50 calls for service this month, which is good. It's a nice solid number. We responded to 49 of those satisfactorily. So the system is working well. The employees are responding great. I want to sort of recognize the tool and the residents' communication and the fact we're responding, and leave on the note that one building done, another building just about to begin. DPW contracts are signed, and we're about to get underway.
And the clock.
I tweeted that.
You did.
Tweeted that.
Tweet
And
it.
before our next meeting, we'll have
Tweeted today.
3,000 Twitter followers. So we will have added 1,000 Twitter followers in the last 11 months.
Wow, you're working with Phil?
And
He's got
thanks
some
to,
upticks in numbers, too.
and thanks to Phil, we get a lot of calls
Retweets?
for reported on
He's
the
all-
moms of North Andover website.
Oh, jeez.
He's
So
there,
whenever
yes.
there's an issue,
He's there, yeah.
Phil's,
We will leave that one untouched.
yeah.
It's great.
I mean it. It's
So
a
actually, there
compliment.
was a question that was
Moms
posed, and I don't know that I necessarily
and
answered
dads.
it the best way, but there was a question about the textile
Yes, great
program that was
question.
brought to us.
Yes, so as you may recall, they needed to get a critical mass of 40,000 residents under contract. They have commitments to exceed that number. The challenge right now was, in the intervening time, as we were the sort of initial community going back and forth around the terms of the agreement, a question was raised of whether or not they would be required to follow the state's prevailing wage law. If they are required to follow the state's prevailing wage law, it may alter their ability or affect their ability to pull off the service, because in terms of being able to pay costs back and taking that at a no-cost service, the cost of labor under the prevailing wage law would change the game for them. So they're in the process of determining whether or not the prevailing wage law applies, and if so, which aspect of the prevailing wage law. So if it's determined that it's not subject to the prevailing wage law, then we'll be proceeding. If it's determined that it's a van driver, as an example, as opposed to a traditional trash truck, we'd proceed. But we may not proceed if it has to follow the prevailing wage law as it relates to traditional recycling trash. We should know that in the next 2 to 3 weeks, and I'll be informing the board and everybody else about it. But they've generated enough critical mass from other communities interested, with us at the front of that train, that they're ready to go.
Great. Mr. Assistant Town Manager, any updates on any capital projects?
As the manager said, we've executed the contract with LD Russo, Inc. of Harvard for the Public Works project, and have given them a notice to proceed. That project will start on Monday, November 28th.
Cool. How about the town hall? What do we, any updates on, we get all the doorknobs in? and
Flashing
I know you
lights.
handed out the keys tonight,
The
anything?
clock is working.
That's huge. The clock on Main
Trust me-
Street is
trust
working
me, I
again.
get 2 or 3 calls a day on that clock. Odds and ends, just normal, like your own personal house, just odds and ends that we're still trying to
Put up and get,
cross the T's, dot the I's.
Fix. Punch list.
Who's all the way?
Oh, that's that crowd. That's
I was
that
going to ask that.
That is not within my purview.
Yes, no,
The
that's
clock
not
in
correct.
here?
Right there.
Anything on the walls are not within my purview.
No, the clock, yes,
And you're absolutely right about that.
there were multiple clocks taken down and multiple clocks used, but more clocks we use than were taken down, so we have to find a replacement.
We got that clock many years ago.
We have you.
We'll get another one.
I know.
Okay. Anything else? Our next meeting is December 5th, 2016, right here in this room at 7 PM.
Tax classification hearing, your favorite.
Oh, yes, tax classification
right.
hearing, so,
Garrett show.
yeah, we'll be ready for that. Okay.
Happy Thanksgiving to everyone.
Happy
And
Thanksgiving.
don't forget the parade.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Mr. Stewart, do I have a motion?
Second.
All those in favor?
Bad done.
We're adjourned. Thank you.
Come to you, miss.